Jay here for Stretford, Paddock. That's Stephen Howson. And this is a bit of a chat, a little bit of a look at what's going on at Manchester United with Michael Carrick as well. Steve, always good to chat to you. I was watching your review with Joe Smith, that's the one, after the Everton game. And look, it's another win. He's on a roll. Is it this time round? It's 5 wins and a draw. We can't take that for granted because let's face facts, we didn't see that under the previous manager at all during his tenure. So obviously the results have been good. We've seen some very good performances, particularly against Manchester City and Arsenal. However, you were raising a few sort of, not red flags, but you were saying, look, it's not all been plain sailing. There's a few things we have to look at here and we have to address and we have to acknowledge, because whilst we all love Michael Carrick, and we've spoken about that, me and you spoke about last week, you can't just go into this with sort of, with the blinkers on. You have to look at what is going on. And you sort of pointed out a few things that you think maybe there's room for improvement there, maybe there's a couple of things he needs to think about. In terms of his sort of tactics and the way he's approaching the games, what have you made of it over the last couple of games in particular? Because we've seen a couple of performances that, certainly by the high standards he set, haven't been as good as previously.
No, I think I had quite a few messages about my review last night. They said that people thought it was a little bit overly negative, but when you compare it to the results we were getting under Amorim, I understand that it probably does come across as overly negative. And the record that Carrick has put up is nearly flawless in terms of pure results. But you can't just look at the results. This channel wouldn't exist if it was only about the results. No. Like we talk about the game. Football is probably, because of the fine margins in football and because of the nuance that matters and because it's the least sort of statistically relevant game, because of those fine margins, like in basketball when it's 106 and 104, like, you know what I mean? Like every goal, every shot, every point doesn't quite matter as much as when it's a 1-0 game. And that's why there's so many upsets in football, because it is such a low-scoring game. The higher the scoring of the game, the less margin or the more margin for error that you get, the better teams generally always end up winning because they have so many more scoring opportunities. In football, you can see big teams held to losses. And because of the low frequency of scoring, that's why you see upsets in football. And that's why it gets analysed to the levels it gets analysed, because these massive moments in games matter. That's why corners are the absolute clusterfuck that they are at the moment. That's why goal scorers are revered in the way that they are, because these things matter. We analyse stuff, we talk about stuff, people have opinions on it, and there are vastly varied opinions on football. And they are all relevant to a greater or lesser degree because of the way the game goes. If you only ever looked at the result, sound, when we're winning. But then don't cry when we start dropping points and you go, but I thought we were winning, because there's been warning signs.
Yeah.
I know that there's, West Ham game aside, we've had really, really good low XG conceded in terms of the chances that we are allowing opposition to have. That's a positive thing. And then on top of that, the goalkeeper's doing real well. We've gone from having 2 clean sheets all season, I think, under Amorim.
I think so, yeah, something like that. I'm trying to think.
So 3 and 6. Yeah. That's huge. That is like a statistical, significant sort of shift in what was happening pre and post the managerial change. We aren't allowing many shots. We aren't allowing many high-value shots. And we've kept 3 clean sheets in 6 games. And we've played the best 2 teams in the league. Like, not bad going in the grand scheme of things.
No.
So, I think you're right to analyse. And even if you're winning, like, someone mentioned this to me in one of my comments, which said they thought I was overly harsh when we beat Newcastle 1-0. And it was like, well, we won. I was like, yeah, but it was shit.
Yeah, it's not like, I get your point, you're not like it's an agenda or whatever. It's like, let's look at what we're seeing in terms of performances. And I think with Carrick for me as well, like, you get to the stage where, look, you don't need to keep doing disclaimers. We all love Michael Carrick, made that clear. But you get to the point where you stop comparing him to Ruben Amorim. You almost compare him to himself. So you might go, okay, we know he's better, or the performances and results have been better under Michael Carrick than Ruben Amorim. Anyone can see that. the record speaks for itself. The standard of the opposition we've beaten and the way those games have gone shows that it is better. But there gets to a point where you go, we're not comparing it to what Ruben Amorim's doing, actually comparing it to what we saw earlier in Michael Carrick's sort of tenure to what we've seen more recently, where there has been games where I thought the West Ham game, for example, was probably our worst performance under Carrick, relatively speaking, because he's had so many good performances. That one was a bit under par and a bit of a smash and grab, and at least we got a draw out of it. And I get there's an argument to be made there. How much does it come into losing certain players to some of the games we've seen? Because when he started, he had almost a full squad to choose from. Ballon d'Orgu was one of his best players. Scored an absolute worlder against Arsenal, was mint against City. He's been out since the Arsenal game. That's a loss. People kind of dismiss it a little bit because it's still that thing of, it's only Patrick Dorgu. But this is a player that is essential to the way Carrick likes to play and was playing very well. Then you've just lost Lisandro Martinez.
I think
both those boxes.
I think Dorgu... Do you know what? I'm wrong, actually. I would have played Patrick Dorgu at left back against both West Ham and Everton because of the way that I expected the games to have gone. Carrick wouldn't have just stuck with the same 11. But I think that is one of my criticisms of him.
Go on.
Is that he's turned in the same answers for different questions. And he'd be right to go, I've won 5 out of 6 and I've only drawn the other one. And you go, okay, you got a point. But how much of this is luck and how much of this is by design? The City game felt very much in control, very much by design. Arsenal was less of that, but still quite good. Spurs, they were down to 10 men in the shite, so it is what it is. Fulham was nice. You know what I mean? There's been different questions asked of us, but he's putting the same answer out every single time. And like I said, the only changes we've seen are enforced ones. We lose Martinez, Euro goes in. We lose Ballon d'Orgu, Cunha got back in after looking great coming off the bench. I'd like to see him mix the 11 up.
Right.
And maybe there was a case of the West Ham game, some of that was tiredness. Now, he doesn't have a million options. I'd argue there's 4 players that you've got that you can bring in, or you've been bringing in outside. Let's count Dorgu and Martinez on top of what you've got. So you've got Euro, you've got Cunha, you've got Sesko, you've got Mazraoui. Outside of that, the drop-off is pretty significant. You're looking at a little bit of a hopeful, don't quite know where he's at fully yet in Shea Lacey, but that's it.
Yeah.
We kind of know what you're going to get out of Xerxes, and it's underwhelming.
Yeah. No, I do hear what you're saying.
Exactly
I think
the same.
If it was to play devil's advocate a little bit, could you argue that following the Spurs game, he stuck with that same team because, okay, without 10 men, but it's a good result and a good performance, so he sticks with it. West Ham, I thought it came a bit too soon after the Spurs game. I don't think we were used to it. Maybe he's looked at it and gone, we've had such a gap now, I can go back to this, I can stick with this same team because we've had such a big gap, they'll be fine. And is the Palace game not the sort of the acid test for this now? Because this is a game coming...
No, I think last night's was very much an acid test. Was that the one where you felt he should have gone differently? Well, look at the data from it. We saw Lamens complete one long pass because who was he sending it to?
Yeah.
Right, and you saw Mbeumo win 0 duels. Why? Because you're asking him to compete with Tarkowski. Like, it felt like we were making dumb decisions, both with the team selection and with how we were trying to play. So that tells me that the selection was incorrect. You might say you're justified because you got the win and actually your substitute was the one that came on and got the win in the end, but maybe the game would have gone different if you'd have had that outlet from the start. It's impossible to say without running the game back, isn't it?
Yeah.
I just can't believe that the same players are the correct answer no matter what the question is.
Right. You don't think this is 93, 94 where you go, there's your 11, we're not going to go through it, I keep doing this, but there's your 11, they can go out and they can play the game. You want to see him mix it up a little bit. Obviously, he can't go backwards, he can go forwards. Would you like to see him do it against Crystal Palace? Because I was saying last night on the watch-along before kick-off, I think that Palace is the game he has to change it because you've got Newcastle a few days later. So I think that's the time you start mixing it up because those two games are all a lot like 4 days apart.
Palace at home in free fall. Just lost a couple of their best players. Yeah. Managers clearly looking at brochures for new houses somewhere
doing
else.
His best, and he's doing an Amorim. Yeah. I mean, I hate the fans and I hate the owners, and the fans need to be humble. Like what?
Yeah.
And
parking across 2 car parking spots at the office and everything. Like just fully not caring.
I mean, not don't give a sauce.
That has to be a win to 0.
Yeah.
That might be the time that you give Sesko a run out. That might be the time that you try and rotate somewhere else. Maybe, probably not loads. Maybe 1 or 2 tops, because I don't think you've got the squad to do more than that. Newcastle's probably more of a don't lose than a must win.
Yeah, they're a weird side.
4 points from that.
I think that's decent. This is a criticism, by the way, about. There's been a criticism, I should say, of Carrick at Middlesbrough in terms of how he manages his squad and his subs. I think he had.
Plan A great, no plan B.
Yeah, that is something that has been levelled on him. Do you think he's got the ability as a manager and a coach, even though what we've seen at Middlesbrough is quite the same, but just from what you've seen so far, to learn from this, to gain? Because one of the bugbears of mine is when people say you don't learn on the job as United manager. Well, you do. Every manager, Fergie learned on the job as United manager. It's just how much you have to learn and what the sort of levels you've got when you come into the job.
That was 40 years ago.
Oh yeah. I don't want, this is a bit of a tangent, but I don't want Hearts to win the Scottish Premier League.
I kind of do.
No, I still want Fergie to have that record of being the last manager outside the old firm to win the Scottish Premier League. I don't want anyone to beat Real Madrid unless it's United in a final in European competition, because I still want Fergie to be the last person to do that.
Even if it goes and it lasted for 40 years.
I know, it's just unreal. You know what really annoys me, right, is when you see these virgins on football shows and they go, oh, well, Fergie didn't do it anywhere, he just came in United, and you're like, what are you on about? The guy beat Real Madrid in a final with Aberdeen. What are you talking about? Like, he built something from nothing in Scotland that challenged the very best teams in the world.
Jay, if anybody's saying that, you can just immediately dismiss the rest of whatever comes out of that.
I do, and it's a very good tactic, you're right to say that. We don't know what's going to happen. He's getting the results. Do you feel like we sort of, the Everton game, there was an improvement? Because I know there's an improvement in result before anyone starts, or do you think it was a bit more of the same, and do you think like that should be a wake-up call for him? Or do you think he could look at it and go, look, West Ham wasn't good enough, Everton was a bit better, we're moving in the right direction? Or if you're him, would you have alarm bells ringing? Because I don't want this ride to end. This is my thing. I don't want it to. I just want us to keep going. I do.
Well, always.
No, I mean like.
I know, but always.
Stay undefeated.
It didn't matter who was manager, even if it was David Moyes.
No, but he's...
Play like Fergie's boys.
I know, but even more so with Carrick. I'm already emotionally invested. Because when you see him in that dugout, it just brings back such good memories. It does. When you listen to him, you think, this guy, man. When you hear him talking about the academy, he isn't going... I don't want to turn this into hating on Amorim, because we've done enough of that. But he isn't going into press conferences going... I'll tell you what, Harry Hamas, he's not doing much, is he? Or Cheeto, he couldn't score for Toffee. I know I'm exaggerating. He's saying the right things. He
6
looks
goals
the part.
In 3 games.
Yeah, it's just nice at the minute. I want it to stay being nice. So what do you reckon? What do you think is gonna? How do you think this is gonna go down?
I'd like him to, but at the moment, he isn't.
Yeah.
As much as you want to paint it in any other light than, look, the results are fantastic, and if he draws 3 or 4 more but wins the rest, does anyone give a fuck?
No.
Is there anyone not wanting to give him the job full time on the back of that? Probably not. I can't imagine that there's anybody better to come in and do the job than him.
You didn't sit us all down, we were already sat down. And off the bar, you got us all to close our eyes. And you said, imagine Enrique's appointed, Tuchel's appointed, whoever's appointed, Michael Carrick, and you said that's the one that really sort of excites you, that's the one that gets you emotional, that's the one you want. Is that still the case?
I remember on this here channel, probably 10 years ago, Sam Homewood it might have been longer, because he might have been talking about Ryan Giggs, if I think about it. And he was talking about how football is inherently romantic. It's stupid. Yeah. There's no logic in what we do. There's no logic.
Imagine explaining to an alien what we do and what we spend our money on and what we drag our kids to and all the rest of it. They think we're romantic.
And now our weekends get ruined because 11 fellas. And let's be honest, if people dressed how they dress on a football pitch in Greg's, you'd look at them funny, right? However, when 77,000 people turn up to watch them dressed like that at work... Yeah,
shout at them, scream at them, cheer at them, sing.
And an alien would sit you down and be like, wow, how long have you known those guys? I don't know them. Right. Do any of these people know them? Half a dozen.
He knows one of their cousins.
Yeah.
And he's met his missus.
He went to the same school. No, not at the same time.
Yeah.
It was years later. Right. Okay.
It's not logical, is it? It's emotional.
Yeah, it's entirely emotional. It's entirely romantic. Like, only one team really gets to win anything that anyone actually gives a fuck about at any one time. And there's 92 professional clubs and countless hundreds of others below, all dreaming of being that team at some point. There's millions of kids with the idea that they'll one day play for England or Manchester United. Probably none of them will, in the grand scheme of things. It's mental.
Yeah.
So why not just lean into the romanticism side of it? Because how much better is it than that? How much better was 99 with the fact that it was half a dozen lads that had come through the academy, that supported the club, doing what they did 7 years on from winning the FA Youth Cup? You know, how much better is it when all of those things align than just, I don't know, being the plaything of a nation state that abuses human rights?
Yeah, and has 115 charges still hanging over him. It could be worse, couldn't it? Now, I'm with you. Do you know what? It reminds me of, like, you know what it is with Carrick as well? If he carries on, he keeps winning matches, and we get to the end of the season, we've got Champions League football, and we give him the job, and it doesn't work out, and so be it. What I would hate more is if we don't give him the job, someone else comes in and flops. Because I'd just be like, it was right there.
Because that's not happened, has it? Every time.
Every time. I thought it was right there. Let's at least... Do you know, like when we started doing this? When we went to Stretford, we became Stretford Paddock. I mean, you had responsibilities, and it was like, this is a gamble. And I remember saying to Mr. at the time, I was like, look, we're going to work for ourselves, and this might not work out. It might not get a living out of it, but I'll always regret if we don't do it. And if the lads go and do it without me, which you know that you would have done, and whether they flop or not, I'll regret not being a part of that. And I feel like that's the same with Carrick. It's like, I just regret if we just let him go off and we bring in Tuchel or whoever, and it's just like, it doesn't happen. And you think,
how often have we appointed the safe choice? David Moyes was the safe choice.
10 years. He's been in the Premier League 10 years. Safe pair of hands. Fergie knows his granddad.
Was the safe choice.
Won everything. Experienced.
Jose Mourinho was the absolute guaranteed success.
3 Premier Leagues. What can go wrong?
You know, Solskjaer was the safe choice after the interim job that he did.
Did well, knows the club, smashed it, all the players love him. What can go wrong?
And then you went for 2 hipster choices in Ten Hag and Amorim because they'd been successful in their relevant leagues.
Yeah.
And both of them got dragged out the back like all yellow. So, like, why not?
Why not? Hey, just give it Carrick forever. Go and check him out on all his other channels. Stretford, Paddock FC, Stephen Howson. You know where to find him. That's been Stephen Howson. I've been Jay Moy. Don't forget as well to check out the link in the description for the merchandise. And don't forget to subscribe. And thanks for watching.